In many ways, I think that dogmatism is destroying fitness information online. Now that might seem like a bit of a sweeping, dramatic statement. Maybe I am just feeling a bit extra today, but I think I can back it up. Because essentially what I say so often boils down to the same thing. It's not that I'm telling you what I think you should do. In fact, I'm quite against that. What I'm telling you is to consider other options. What I'm trying to tell you is that we don't know enough to make sweeping statements about what is the optimal training for every single person. And yet so many people seem to believe otherwise. They have their thing, and then they're adamant that that method, or their favourite exercise, is best, and everything else is just a waste of time. You hear it over and over again, ironically about completely different stuff. And what's so frustrating is they often come to this conclusion because they've just watched a few videos telling them that. Then they go around the internet commenting on other videos and telling them that they're wrong. Science proves that you only need this one exercise, or that only this method works. No way that information could have been misrepresented to them. No way that that could be not the whole story. I mean, I've only done this my whole life, but to be clear, I'm not trying to say that I know better than anyone. I'm not bragging. All I've learned, and what I want to convey to you, is how much I don't know. How much all of us don't know. Consider a response to my recent video on training legs. I said in that video that most people don't need to train heavy on their legs. They don't need to lift heavy weights or to make it 2/3 of their training. Not that it isn't good, but that they don't need to. For health purposes, they can do mobility work, and for performance, they can get a lot from explosive leg training, bodyweight training, running, anything like that. Now, I expected some pushback to this, and actually it wasn't as bad as I thought it might be, but the people that did have a problem with my philosophy represent exactly what I'm talking about here. Because there were those comments telling me that no, squats are the single best exercise. Everyone should perform them. Doing anything else is just avoiding hard work, making excuses, coping. Strength, after all, is the foundation of all human performance, and your legs are the most powerful part of your body, so what possible reason would you have not to train them? Now this sounds like a moral stance, and I've been accused of not being a serious fitness YouTuber when I tell people to consider doing alternatives like kettlebell swings or goblet squats, depending on your goals. Someone said I was just going to keep beginners stuck as beginners. But that's even when I explain the benefits of kettlebell swings are different. I'm not trying to claim that they're better for max strength, but they are more ballistic, and they do provide a good combination of cardiovascular training and strength training, one that will help to give you a more ripped physique as a result, and give you endurance to actually perform in sports or labour. It's that happy middle ground that covers both things. Kettlebell swings aren't better than squats, they're just different, and therefore better for some people, depending on their goals. And maybe more fun for you, maybe not. People just can't fathom that maybe absolute strength isn't the only goal. Even when I lead with that. These people can't touch their toes, they get out of breath climbing the stairs, but they'll tell you off for neglecting squats. And again, act like this is a matter of morality, which is completely illogical. By the way, guys, just like to take a moment to tell you about today's sponsor, NordVPN. NordVPN is a virtual private network, which is a tool you can use to protect your internet browsing. It works by letting you connect to a server located elsewhere, which hides your IP address and browsing activity from any ne'er-do-wells that might be listening in. It's just one part of what should be a more comprehensive approach to internet security, but it's an important tool and it has many uses. One example of how this might protect your data is against a man-in-the-middle attack. This is an attack that can occur when you connect to a public Wi-Fi, like in a coffee shop, and if someone who wants your data happens to be connected to the same network, they can potentially listen in on your traffic. Unless you're using a VPN, in which case all they'll see is that you connected to that server. NordVPN can also be used to access region-locked content. And of course that includes streaming services, so you can watch shows and movies that otherwise wouldn't be available in your region. And that's not all. For instance, I've been using it lately to access a YouTube video downloader tool that is blocked in the UK, and it's been a bit of a lifesaver for me. It can even be used to help you circumvent time-limited services so that you can reconnect to the same website but as a different user. And it comes with a host of additional features like threat protection, which automatically blocks malicious websites. Go to nordvpn.com/thebioneer and you'll get 4 free months on a 2-year plan, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so zero risk if it's not for you. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and now on with the show. In the same comment section, someone told me that squats were categorically the best exercise for jump height, and that whatever else I was saying was nonsense because science proved it, don't you know? I told them actually when you're playing sports, you usually jump from running. That means you don't have time to stop and to go through that amortization phase to squat down on both feet and then leap up in the air. You jump off of one leg. And this isn't actually about power or strength at all. It's about translating energy upwards using the elastic recoil of the tendons. If you look, there's not much flexion at all going on. I learned this from world-renowned functional trainer JC Santana, and it was a real light bulb moment for me, which is maybe why I bring it up at every possible opportunity. But then this guy counters that no, despite everything I just said, despite the appearance of the movement being different, the range of motion being different, studies categorically show that squatting is best for jump height. And that would make sense because strength is so fundamental to performance, so everybody needs to do squats. Of course, that entirely missed my point, because how do you think they measure jump height in those studies? As a standing counter-movement jump. In other words, they stand on the spot, squat down and leap straight up. Exactly not how you jump when you're playing sports. And when you look at studies that actually do look at the way you jump playing sports, they find that other techniques, things like plyometric training, are as effective and even in some cases more so. It's missing so much nuance to forget that there's more than one type of jumping, more than one kind of jump. And we know that training ankle stiffness has similar benefits too, all with significantly less recovery and fatigue than squatting, which is something you need to take into account when programming. And at the risk of repeating myself, I also take issue in principle with people using the argument of running faster and jumping higher as their reason for doing this exercise or that exercise, if they don't ever actually run or jump inside the gym or otherwise. I've actually just had another comment on that leg training video saying that the whole video was just me making excuses to be okay with avoiding hard training. How weak, they said. Now I hope I don't come across as a bit petty responding to comments like this, but it is a great example of this myopic mindset again, this dogmatism. Because I clearly am not afraid of hard training. I have a fitness YouTube channel. In that very video, I'm doing sequences of pistol squats and sissy squats, which are not only hard to do, they were also very hard to learn and took a lot of time and dedication. But this simply reveals that that person can't appreciate hard training unless it's the hard training that they think is worthwhile. I would even argue that a lot of people view a lot of weightlifting as a way to avoid doing cardio, because cardio is hard work for a lot of people. Again, this isn't to say that squats aren't extremely powerful, just that they're not the best for everything or every scenario. Because nothing is the best for everything and every scenario. Nah, squats are the best for ever.
And there's going to be flutes playing and trombones and flowers and garlands of fresh herbs. And we will dance.
But this is the kind of myopia you see all the time in discussions around fitness and performance. And this is the kind of misapplication of science. Scientific studies lack nuance by design. They need to remove confounding variables that might skew results. They're attempting to test a precise relationship or to compare two different scenarios. Can you build more muscle by doing higher reps or lower reps? All other things being equal. They might take some untrained individuals, get them to perform leg curls, and see who grows bigger hamstrings, for example. That is good science. Bad science is then taking those results and applying them to every possible scenario, which is where the researchers themselves start slapping their heads. Assuming that the study is entirely watertight, which it almost certainly isn't, this is why we repeat the same studies over and over, what if high reps work better for trained athletes and low reps work better for untrained? Or vice versa? What if high reps work better for certain muscle groups? What if high reps work best when combined with low reps? What if high reps work better for someone who has previously done heavy weights and therefore comes closer to maxing out their fast twitch fibre? These are called moderating variables, and ultimately it means that it's not accurate to say that science proves this or that about exercise, because when you reintroduce the moderating variables, you can see how it can be changed to happen differently. We will never be able to test every single possible scenario because the human body is far too complex for that. We might see a study suggesting that 3 sets of bicep curls is better than doing 2 sets, but is that still true if you're also doing chin-ups in the same workout? You know, doing 3 sets of bicep curls, isn't that different from doing bicep curls, hammer curls, and chin-ups for the biceps? Does doing a massive drop set change the outcome as well? It's such an obvious thing to miss, the fact that some exercises overlap, and yet people do, simply taking the studies exactly at face value. And the truth is we still don't know much conclusively about hypertrophy at all, the mechanisms of it. We know some of the factors and the processes involved, but there are many nuances and mechanisms we don't fully understand. And there are huge aspects of training performance that are completely ignored by the majority of content on YouTube, like the aforementioned elastic recoil of the tendons, like the fact that connective tissue makes up 30% of muscle mass, like angiogenesis, the fact that we can permanently increase blood flow to the muscles, thereby improve recovery, hypertrophy, injury prevention, strength endurance, and more. Things like sympathetic tone. All of these are really interesting topics that just don't get explored and that mitigate so much of what we know. When someone says a rep range is best or an exercise is best, they're typically ignoring all these things and looking instead at a single metric.
How big did muscle get?
Just like they typically ignore entire planes of motion, body parts and energy systems. The very same people preaching that everyone needs to do squats or whatever exercise it is are almost always ignoring rotational strength, the ability to produce power in the transverse plane. I've talked about this on this channel a lot. It's incredibly important for everything from throwing to grappling to pulling and pushing, to punching to lifting at awkward angles. So why would someone preach that you have to train the big three lifts while completely ignoring things like cardio, mobility, other forms of hypertrophy, or entire planes of motion? Where does this cognitive dissonance come from? Again, the answer is dogmatism, groupthink, and human nature. You know, partly it's just people being extremely competitive, wanting to be the best, especially guys a lot of the time. So many people want to be the very best at what they do. They want to be the strongest, the toughest, the best fighter, the most alpha. They want this so badly that they dedicate huge amounts of time to performing in their chosen category, whether it's their big three lifts, their bicep size, or their mile time, long past the point where getting better at this had any positive impact on any other part of their life. Again, that's fine. If you want to be the best at something, that's great. That's your prerogative. But then don't go around telling people that that's the only form of fitness that counts. Because some of those people will then gaslight themselves into believing that their training does, in fact, make them not only the strongest, not only the most powerful, also the best fighter and the toughest, and their dad can beat up your dad. And they join forums and subreddits full of other people, all espousing the same thing, echo chambers. Again, it's human nature, but I think it's kind of exacerbated by the internet. And any challenge to this view will be met with derision, as the ego must now protect itself. The sunk cost is too huge. How can you admit, after spending 10 years bodybuilding, that maybe you should have just done a little bit of cardio as well? I mean, some people can, but some people really struggle with that. That's why when I say that kettlebell swings might have merit for some people, this can be seen as a personal attack for some people, as someone diminishing what they've been doing, because I'm saying maybe it doesn't do everything. If they have the platform, they might become evangelical too, and they might tell other people who are doing other things that they are coping. I hate the phrase coping, because it essentially implies that if you aren't interested in what they're interested in, you must be lying. If a powerlifter tells you they don't care about ripped abs, then a bodybuilder will tell them that they're coping. If a bodybuilder tells you that they don't care about having a massive squat, a powerlifter will tell them they're coping. You might think that I'm picking a little bit on powerlifters here, and that's not the case at all. Of course, there are plenty of really nice powerlifters who are super chill about training however you want. But the reason I keep mentioning powerlifting is because that's like the prevailing narrative online at the moment, that you just need strength. You might have heard the idea that strength is the foundation of all performance, for example. You might even have heard the absurd claim that you don't need cardio or endurance because if you can squat a really heavy weight, that means you can also do lots more reps of a lighter weight than someone who can't squat the heavy weight, and therefore you don't need endurance. This is a view perpetuated by some prominent content creators, believe it or not. But it's so demonstrably untrue. Like, powerlifters do not do well in marathons. You don't see many people built like powerlifters in marathons, just like they don't do particularly well at parkour or gymnastics. I'm bewildered by people who tell me that the only thing you need to jump higher is a really big squat, and that fast twitch fiber can't be trained, and that technique doesn't matter, and all this. Mate, if that's the case, then why aren't all high jumpers built like powerlifters? Why don't powerlifters start dominating in every single sport? And how can you say that strength is more important than cardio? It's just meaningless. If you have no energy, you can't use your strength. In nearly any sport, endurance is arguably more important, because if you're gassed out, you're basically out of the game. Someone argued they could prove that strength was the most important because they said if you had no strength at all, you wouldn't be able to move. But that's like the exact same thing for mobility. If you have no mobility, it means that you're paralyzed. And of course the same would be true for cardio, right? In fact, if you didn't have any cardio or any strength, you'd die because your heart wouldn't be working. And the body doesn't even use strength, cardio, or mobility on its own. These are meaningless distinctions to the body. It uses them all together. They're all necessary for any given movement. Any given movement involves an element of endurance, of strength, of coordination, and mobility. And if we close our minds to other forms of training, because we're so certain that ours is the only way that matters, because we're so invested in that one way of training, then not only are we going to overlook our own weaknesses and opportunities for growth, we're also going to be hurting ourselves by neglecting some of the amazing things our bodies could do, or even just learning from people, or finding new exciting avenues for training. The only people we're hurting are ourselves and anyone who's buying into our rhetoric. And guys, if you like the idea of training that's a little bit more free and that focuses not just on one thing but on every aspect of your performance, then you might enjoy my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0. It's designed precisely to break out of the confines of training in a single modality and to instead develop speed, mobility, strength and endurance all at once. It comes with an 80+ page ebook and over 2 hours of instructional videos showing you how you can train at any level with minimal equipment to this end. I'll put a link in the description down below. But then comes the other, slightly more legitimate argument that there's only so much time in the day. You can't train your squats, your rotational strength, your grip strength, your cardio, your hand conditioning and your lactic threshold. There's just not enough time or energy. Well, there's two answers to this. The first is to know what works best for your goals. This is my body crafting argument, crafting the body that's right for you. Or the other way is to consider just engaging in an active lifestyle, in the skills and hobbies and activities that you enjoy. Things that will test you and force you to adapt, martial arts, rock climbing, swimming, football, tennis, hiking, trail running, whatever it may be. Combine them in a way to get balanced stimuli for the body and focus on enjoying them, not taking them to their logical extreme. When you do that, you develop all your traits via a kind of trickle-down method. Sports will make you faster and more explosive, while developing balance, strength, proprioception and decision making. And they'll also train things that are so niche you never would get otherwise. For example, your tibialis anterior can be trained just by running uphill and swimming. And the only problem here then is that you aren't going to be the very strongest, or the very fastest, or the very most mobile. You won't look like Mr. Olympia. That doesn't matter. What matters is that the average is going to be elevated. You'll be overall a better and healthier organism. Someone who's a little bit faster, a little bit more energetic, a little bit stronger. Stop trying to impress the opposite sex or strangers online. Stop trying to be a badass or succumbing to peer pressure. And stop getting all of your information from just one place. It doesn't matter if you fit in with the crowd that you found on Reddit. Let go of being the toughest and instead focus on simply expressing the best version of what you already are. And of course this all applies to so many areas of life. So often we act in a certain way, absolutely sure of ourselves, forgetting to really test our assumptions that we've inherited or just heard, that are so often just arbitrary. And let others do the same. Let them do things their way. Don't judge them. Maybe you could learn something from them. Now I'm going to risk sounding a bit like a hippie, but don't accept other people's truths. Find your own. Be one of one. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.